shadows that wear our faces. My escape from the skinwalker of Appalachia. They say the Appalachians never forget a secret. Their peaks brood in blue twilight, their hollows swallow voices, and somewhere between the moss-cloaked oaks and crumbling coal towns, you feel the mountains breathing, slow, cold, deliberate. I grew up with those breaths pressed against my bedroom window like a second heartbeat. By 28, I figured I'd heard every backwoods yarn. Ghosts riding moonshine stills, devil dogs pacing ridgelines, witches trapping storms in mason jars. But none of it prepared me for the night the mountain tried on my skin like a stolen coat. I am the only one left alive to tell you what really lurks in that wilderness, and why you must never answer when it calls your name after dark. 8 chapters might feel like a long hike, but listen, every step matters. My throat still tastes of pine smoke and fear, and the thing that walked beside me is still out there, wearing familiar faces, learning new words, sharpening old hunger. If you finish this story, do one thing: keep the porch light on and your doors locked. A skinwalker hates corners lit by honest bulbs. It hides in the hum between memory and silence. And if you hear footsteps that echo your own cadence, run. Don't reason, don't pray, just run downhill and pray. Gravity loves you more than it loves the creature. I survived by accident, and by sins I'm still tallying. Survival is never clean, but if a single line of what follows helps you live when the mountains decide they want company, then my nightmares will have earned their keep. Chapter 1. The Hills That Whisper. It started the week the cicadas rose. The air was heavy with their static chorus, as if every tree carried a radio tuned to the same fevered station. I'd come home to Morgan's Gap, West Virginia, to clear out my father's cabin after the mining accident took him. The valley, 2 ridges folded like praying hands, felt smaller than I remembered. But the forest looked taller, hungrier. Ferns brushed my knees on the overgrown trail, and the old coal conveyor tower, once a rusted skeleton above the pines, had vanished altogether under vines. Progress here wasn't pavement and bars of cell reception. It was the land reclaiming what man abandoned. My first night back, I lit the Franklin stove, uncorked a forgotten bottle of rye, and tried to read Dad's ledger of debts. Rain hammered the tin roof in rhythmic fists. Around midnight, the storm snapped in half, leaving a hush so sudden my ears rang. Then, from somewhere beyond the porch, came a sound like someone whispering through a mouthful of creek water. Garbled, liquid, but unmistakably a voice. My name. 3 syllables drawn out past recognition. Da-a-annual. I stiffened. The voice was wrong in 2 ways. First, it belonged to my father. I'd know his weary baritone anywhere. Second, he was nearly a week dead, zipped in a body bag at Matthew's funeral parlor 40 miles south. The ledger slipped from my lap. Embers popped in the stove, but no wind stirred the chimes. Daniel. The second call came closer, right outside the window. Instinct yanked me off the rocker and onto the cedar floorboards. My pulse ticked in my throat like a trapped moth. People who never lived in the mountains imagine silence as empty. They don't understand the density of a real hush, the way it presses against skin, making you aware of your own blood. When that hush is pierced by a dead man's voice, logic buckles. I crawled to the gun safe, hands shaking as if they belonged to someone newly acquainted with fingers. Dad never kept the keys in the logical place. Instead, he taped them beneath the kitchen table. I scraped my knuckles, retrieving them. Metal clicked. Hinges groaned. The 12-gauge felt lighter than I remembered, maybe because the burden of holding it was shared with fear. I thumbed 2 shells into the chamber and inched toward the front door. Another voice joined the first. Mom's lilt, gone 10 years from lung cancer. Danny, open up, sweet pea. We're cold. The words were correct, but the tone was damp, as if the sentences had been soaked and wrung out. My mother never sounded wet. I almost opened the door. Grief does that. It turns warnings into invitations. But then a third sound slipped through the keyhole, the scrape of something hooved across the pine decking. Hooves, strict and deliberate, pacing like a deer that learned patience. The handle twitched, tested from outside. I backed away until my shoulder blades kissed the rear wall. The shotgun barrel floated between me and the door. Sweat prickled my scalp. Somewhere behind those inches of heart, pine stood an animal wearing my parents' tongues, waiting for me to believe in miracles. And I almost did, until the voices overlapped, speaking the same plea in stereo, like a skipping record. Flesh doesn't echo itself that way. Only something that practices voices without lungs makes that mistake. The spell cracked. I chambered around, finger tight on the trigger. The voices stopped. The porch board sighed under a sudden weight, then another, pacing left to right. No retreat, just serpentine patience. A low rasp scraped the door, as though a claw tested grain direction. Minutes passed, 5, then 10. Night insects resumed outside, timid at first, then bold. The cicadas reset their static symphony, drowning the rasp. When dawn's first gray seeped through the curtains, I opened the door. Nothing. No claw marks, no prints. Only a faint ammonia scent, like a gutted deer left too long in summer heat. And one more thing. Dad's brass pocket watch, hanging from a nail he'd driven beside the door years ago. I'd buried that watch with him. I took it down with a forked twig, unwilling to touch metal that traveled from coffin to cabin door. The watch still ticked, perfect cadence, but the hands spun counterclockwise. The mountain had introduced itself. That morning I hiked into town seeking cell signal and sense. Mrs. Barber at the general store watched me describe the night, her eyes shrinking behind crow-footed lids. When I finished, she handed me a chipped coffee mug and said only one thing: Skinwalker. She didn't whisper it. She delivered the diagnosis like a bad test result she'd given before. Skinwalker, 2 words I'd heard tossed around campfires but filed under desert myths, Navajo witchcraft, not these Appalachian folds. Mrs. Barber corrected me. Names travel, so do monsters. Sometimes they hitch rides on grief. Your daddy's passing might have flung a door wide for it. She refused payment for the coffee, but pressed a caution into my palm. Don't answer voices after nightfall, no matter how familiar. And if it started mimicking my own voice, leave the mountain. I should have listened. By dusk, I was back at the cabin, packing essentials into Dad's canvas rucksack. Water filter, jerky, maps, the rifle, and the pocket watch now sealed in a mason jar of salt. Yet some fool tendon in my heart held me there. The mountain is a jealous lover. It teaches you to mistake possession for belonging. I told myself one more night to settle things, to burn the ledger and lock the place up. The sun bled behind the ridgeline, turning clouds the color of old wounds. I stood on the porch, watching the last light drip off the treetops, and heard it again. My father's voice, this time from down by the creek, polite as church. "Boy, you dropped something." He was right. I looked down. My flashlight lay at my feet, batteries expelled. When I glanced back toward the creek, a figure stood half in shadow. He was my father in shape only, the posture slouched wrong, arms too long, head cocked away from the light as though light hurt. Then he spoke with my voice. "Come here, Danny." Panic flooded reason. I slammed the cabin door and bolted it, but dread seeped through the wood grain. Outside, the thing began to laugh, 3 different timbres, switching mid-syllable. Dad, Mom, me. Then a 4th voice, foreign yet intimate, like hearing your future self through a cracked mirror. That night I realized survival wasn't a chance getaway. It was going to be an ugly contract with choices I'd regret. And the first clause was simple. The mountain doesn't negotiate. You do. Chapter 2. The mine's mouth. Morning came thin and brittle, the kind that breaks beneath a boot heel the second you test its promise. I spent it dismantling every excuse to stay: boxed photographs, Dad's rust-pitted tools, 2 quilts Mom stitched from flannel shirts. By noon, the rucksack bulged like a guilty conscience. I slung it over one shoulder, locked the cabin, and followed the switchback down to my truck. Only the truck wasn't there. Where gravel should have held 4 knobby Wrangler prints lay nothing but churned earth and a single drag mark leading deeper into the trees, like something massive had hauled my F-150 away by its bumper. Metallic tracks scored the stones at intervals, as if wheels had bounced, weightless, over the ruts. Panic tasted of radiator fluid. I followed the gouges for 30 yards until they vanished at the old logging road, swallowed by moss and decades. Frozen silence knotted around my lungs. I could hike to town, 8 miles if the crow flew sober, but the crow never did, and the ridgeline zigzagged like barbed wire. Still, boots were better than bones. I cinched the straps and started north, skirting briar and tongue-thick kudzu. Cicadas screeched noon sirens. Half a mile in, I spotted the truck, or what was left of it. It rested nose down in a sinkhole where an abandoned mine shaft had caved. The cab's roof crumpled against bedrock like a beer can, windshield spider-veined but intact. No footprints circled the crater. Instead, the same ammonia odor rose, sweet as rotting lilies. I called out, half expecting my own voice to answer back. Nothing. Getting the keys meant crawling across loose shale into the passenger side. The door handle glinted, oily with dew. I reached in, yanked the ring free, and saw my reflection warp in the glass. Except my reflection smiled before I did. My heart lurched. I staggered back, pebbles skittering into the dark mouth below. The smile lingered in the glass an instant longer, like a photograph burning at the edges. The mine's splintered timbers jutted from the sinkhole walls, forming a throat too narrow for light. Dad used to warn me about these old shafts. They're the mountain's gossip lines, son. You lean in, it whispers back. I leaned in. Wind? No. Breathing. Slow, serpentine pulls of air, as if lungs the size of furnaces labored beneath the rock. Then the breathing found language. My mother's lullaby, note perfect, warbling up through a century of coal dust. I backed away so fast I tripped over a stub root and tore my palm open on shale. Blood peppered the gravel. That's when the breathing stopped and a new voice emerged. Mine, hoarse with yesterday's fear. Daniel, you're bleeding. Let me help. The words came from the pit, yet echoed inside my skull. The skinwalker had tasted me. It needed more. Hours later, hard to tally when the sun hid behind thunderheads, I limped into Morgan's Gap, palms wrapped in my torn flannel. Sheriff Logan Mathers stood outside the depot, stuffing chaw behind a molar. He'd run hounds with my father, drank shine with him too. I spilled the whole tale between ragged breaths, the voices, the porch, the truck, the mine. Logan listened without blinking, then spat tobacco like dismissing punctuation. Skinwalker ain't local legend, Danny. It's worse, it's imported. Folklorists say it rides grief like a rail car, picks the freshest sorrow on a line, and hops off where the land's thin. He jerked a thumb at the ridges hemming us in. These hills, thin as onion skin. Lots of old mines, lots of ways up from below. I expected ridicule, maybe a psych hold. Instead, he opened the cruiser trunk and handed me a pump-action Mossberg and 3 shells carved with red crosses on the brass. Rock salt and iron shavings, he said. Won't kill it, but it hates the taste. We drove 3 miles south to Little Zion Cemetery, where Dad's coffin rested beneath a 2-day-old mound. Rain began as we parked, fat, warm drops that smelled of wet slate. Logan produced a crowbar and, without ceremony, pried up the lid of the burial vault. My stomach soured, respect warred with necessity. The coffin was empty, no corpse, No lining, only a greasy smear and claw mark scoring the mahogany interior. Too deep for human fingernails, too broad for any animal native to West Virginia. Something had worn my father's body like a Sunday suit, then shed it for a new disguise. Lightning cracked a silhouette against the trees, a tall figure between trunks, hat brim low, arms too long. The thunder that followed carried my father's voice. "Close that box, Danny. You'll catch a chill." I raised the Mossberg. Logan leveled his service Glock. The figure didn't flee. It tilted its head as if studying us, then melted, no other word, into the underbrush, limbs folding wrong, spine bending sideways until the shape became bush and shadow. We fired. Salt rounds peppered bark. Bark bled. Then silence. Logan holstered his gun with trembling hands. "It came up through the old mine tunnels," he muttered. "Has to be. They run under half this county." He cast a glance at me. "We collapse the main shaft. We box it in, maybe. Or trap ourselves with it," I said. He shrugged. "Sometimes the only door out is back through hell." That night we holed up in the town hall's records room, poring over century-old mine maps. The electricity died at sunset. Logan lit kerosene lamps that painted the walls in rusted amber. Each map revealed new arteries, shafts branching like veins beneath churches, schools, even Mrs. Barber's store. The mine network was a labyrinth, and somewhere inside the skinwalker wore my father's face, learning how to perfect mine. Around midnight, a knock rattled the front door. 2 gentle taps, followed by my mother's voice, soft as bedtime. "Danny, the weather's turning. Let us in." We froze. The town hall had no windows on the ground floor. That voice came through 6 inches of oak and stained glass. Logan clicked off the lamp. Darkness swallowed us. I whispered, "It knows the maps." Outside, footsteps scraped, the slow circle of hooves against flagstone. Then a second knock, this time on the back exit. Same voice, same plea. The creature had split itself, or worse, invited friends. Logan handed me a roll of duct tape. "Cover your mouth. If it starts using your own voice, you might answer." He taped his lips first, then mine. We barricaded the doors with filing cabinets, the metallic screech masked by thunder. Rain hammered the roof but couldn't drown the voices. They multiplied. Dad, Mom, childhood friends, long-dead pets yipping in delight. Each call sought a different fracture in memory. I pressed my palms against my ears. The bleeding cut stung. Warmth trickled down my wrist. The skinwalker smelled blood, and it was hungry. Ambu Chapter 3, Down the Throat of Stone. Dawn smoldered behind storm clouds when the siege finally broke. The voices outside the town hall receded with the rain, fading like a carnival packing up before sunrise. Logan peeled the duct tape from his mouth, the adhesive ripping hair and skin. We didn't speak. Exhaustion filled the room like smoke. Maps lay scattered, lamp oil pooled where a globe had rolled off its stand and shattered. "Today," he rasped, "we seal that shaft." He meant the deep entrance beneath Brimstone Ridge, the oldest mine in the network, rumored to punch straight through to caverns older than coal. The same shaft where Dad's truck lay, gutted. We needed dynamite. The county kept a cache locked in the maintenance barn near the railroad spur, a relic from the days when clearing landslides was cheaper than rerouting roads. Logan fetched the keys, his knuckles white against the ring. As we crossed Main Street, storefronts blinked awake. Mrs. Barber, sweeping her steps, passed a Wynn arranging hymnals in the church foyer. Life wearing the mask of normalcy. Yet every face we passed triggered suspicion. Did those smiles conceal elongated jaws? Those eyes mirrored too deep? The skinwalker could be any of them, or wearing all of them in rotation. The barn smelled of grease and cedar shavings. Crates marked "High Explosive Danger" lined one wall. Logan loaded 8 sticks, 2 spools of fuse wire, and a detonator into a steel toolbox. He handed me a coil of paracord. If it shows up, tie, don't shoot. Salt buys minutes, rope buys hours. On the drive toward Brimstone Ridge, I traced the mountain silhouettes, jagged black teeth gnawing at the sky. Rain slicked the windshield. The wipers fought to clear each new wave, blades squeaking like rodents. We parked at a rusted gate, impassable by vehicle. The mine entrance lay 2 miles up a logging path swallowed by moss. We hiked in silence, boots squelching. Somewhere beyond the ridge, a whistle sounded, sharp, rising, then falling. Not bird, not wind. Logan cocked his head. "It's calling roll," he muttered, checking which voices it still needs. When the mine mouth emerged from the mist, my gut turned to water. Timbers had collapsed since I last saw them hours ago, widening the maw into a jagged grin. A faint trail of black-red fluid, too viscous for water, trickled from the darkness, staining moss like ink. Logan set the toolbox down and unlatched the lid. 5 charges on the ceiling pockets should bring the mountain down. I lit the first fuse length, hands trembling. The flame hissed against drizzle. We advanced, spelunkers to a hell none had mapped. Inside, the shaft breathed humidity laced with carrion. Our headlamps carved cones through dust motes. Each particle seemed to crawl rather than drift. The tunnel forked left into newer cuts, right into older veins. We veered right, toward the oldest rock and the deepest secrets. After 50 yards, boot prints appeared, bare human feet arch-high, toes splayed wider than anatomy textbooks allow. The prints alternated with cloven impressions, as though 2 creatures shared the same path or 1 creature shared 2 bodies. We placed the first charge in a rotten beam pocket. As I hammered the spike, a whisper rose from behind, inches from my ear. "Easy, Danny, you'll hurt yourself." Dad's voice, conversational, warm. I spun. Nothing but darkness and the white cone of Logan's lamp. He'd heard nothing. Second charge, same whisper, different voice. My childhood best friend Ethan drowned in the Cheat River when we were 12. "Come swim, Dan, the water's fine." Third charge, deeper still. Here the tunnel opened into a natural chamber, limestone walls glistening. At its center yawned a vertical shaft, a pit descending beyond the lamp's reach. A rope ladder, new nylon, hung from rebar hooks, swaying though no wind blew. Something moved below, the shuffle of hooves on stone, followed by the soft click of a wristwatch snapping shut. Logan cursed. "It's down there." He handed me the detonator. "Finish this, I'll bait it up the ladder. You blow the roof once it's clear." "Logan, that ladder's a drop shaft. You go down, you're trapped." He cracked a grim smile. Story of my life. Then he descended, shotgun slung, flashlight beam shrinking into the pit. Minutes passed like hours. Voices rose from the shaft. First Logan's, calm but urgent. "Come on, you bastard." Then my father's scream of agony, followed by Mom's sob. Ethan's laugh, Sheriff Logan calling my name in a dozen cadences. My hands spasmed on the detonator. A shape burst from the shaft. Logan, his face pale, eyes wild. He gained the lip and scrambled toward me. Behind him, the skinwalker emerged, wearing Logan's skin like a poorly fitted suit, seams bulging, elbows bending wrong. Its head split at the jawline, revealing teeth like broken mason jars. I pressed the trigger. The explosion punched silence flat. Rock convulsed, dust geysered, the ceiling cascaded into the pit, swallowing creature and sheriff alike. I was thrown against a wall, world tilting, ears ringing. When the rumble settled, a tomb-like hush returned. Only then did I hear Logan's voice, muffled beneath 10 feet of rubble, calling my name. But the calls overlapped, 3 at once, each slightly off-tempo. Salt rounds scattered near my boots, ejected from the blast. None of them would matter. I stumbled backward, lungs full of plastered dust, and fled the collapsing mine. Outside, the ridge groaned, settling debris. The toolbox lay half buried in mud, lid flung open. Inside, the remaining dynamite had vanished. A wet trail of bloody ink led into the trees. Logan had baited it, all right, and it had swallowed more than bait. It had swallowed new flesh and a sheriff's memories. Somewhere in those woods, the skinwalker wore a badge and a smile that wasn't quite human. Rain resumed, cleansing nothing. Chapter 4. Wearing the sheriff's smile. I made it back to Morgan's Gap at dusk, soaked in mountain runoff and guilt. The street lamps buzzed alive, their orange halos trembling. From the edge of town, I spotted the cruiser, Sheriff Logan's cruiser, idling outside Barber's General Store, blue strobes off, engine coughing diesel. A tall silhouette leaned against the hood, hat brim shading a face I knew too well. It was Logan, or the thing inside Logan, and it was waiting for me. I ducked behind a rain barrel as it turned toward the store window, studying its reflection like a child admiring a costume. The skinwalker flexed Logan's hands, testing knuckles, practicing a smile that creaked too wide. Then it strode into the store. I crept along the boardwalk, shotgun hidden beneath Dad's poncho. Inside, Mrs. Barber stood at the counter, recounting till cash. Logan's doppelganger tipped his hat. "Evening, Evelyn," it drawled, flawless mimicry. She didn't notice the subtle lag in eye-blink timing, the strange way his shoulders rose too high when he inhaled. The creature asked for road flares and kerosene. I watched Evelyn ring the sale, oblivious. The bell jingled as it exited. I slipped into the alley, heart pounding. It loaded the supplies into the cruiser trunk, humming my mother's lullaby off-key. Then it paused, nostrils flaring. My blood ran cold, it smelled me. The creature's head snapped toward the alley. "Danny," it called in Logan's baritone, friendly. "You all right, son?" I didn't answer. The poncho hid my tremor as I tightened grip on the Mossberg. Salt rounds, 2 left, rope gone. I stepped into the streetlight. "Logan?" I asked, playing dumb. Rain pattered between us. "Thought you were headed home," it said. "Town's under curfew." "I heard dynamite at Brimstone," I lied. "Came to check on you." Its lips twitched, the smile slipping like a mask. "Brimstone's sealed. No one goes up there." I raised the shotgun. "Step into the light." It obliged, but every step bent bone wrong, joints cracked softly like knuckles being reset. Under the lamp, Logan's eyes gleamed glassy black, pupils swallowing iris. No reflection. My breath clouded. The creature's did not. I fired. Rock salt burst across its chest, sizzling. The skinwalker recoiled, jaws distending in a howl that blended Logan's voice with a guttural roar. Steam hissed from salted wounds. Mrs. Barber rushed to the doorway, horrified. "Sheriff, you okay?" The creature straightened, wound knitting, smile restored. "Misfire," it said. Then its head rotated towards her faster than human necks allow. "Go inside, Evelyn." I pumped the second round, aimed for the face, but the gun clicked hollow, jammed. The skinwalker lunged. I backed into the alley, stumbling over crates. Claws, yes, claws now, slashed the poncho, grazing skin. Pain flared. A siren wailed down Main, Deputy Carl's SUV racing in. The creature froze, calculating. It glanced at me with something like disappointment, then sprinted into darkness, movements blurring between bipedal and quadrupedal. Within seconds, nothing remained but sulfuric stench. Deputy Carl found me trembling, shotgun useless. I told him everything. He didn't laugh. Instead, he loaded me into the SUV and locked the doors. "Emergency town meeting," he said. "We barricade the church, wait until daylight." The congregation hall of Zion Baptist filled with townsfolk clutching lanterns and rifles. Pastor Wynne read Psalm 23 over trembling lips. Deputy Carl addressed the group. "Sheriff's missing, impersonator on the loose. Trust no voice you can't see." Whispers spread, stories of loved ones knocking on windows, pets called by name from the woods. One logger swore he'd seen his dead brother on Route 4 hitchhiking, fear layered thick. I presented the plan. Lower the skinwalker into the iron foundry ruins by the river, trap it beneath the slag chute, and ignite the kerosene. Iron scorches its kind, flame disperses forms. Mrs. Barber volunteered as bait, her sorrow fresh from losing her husband last winter. Grief drew it, she said. Let grief end it. I hated myself for agreeing. Midnight. Fog rolled off the Appalachian River, muffling steps. We positioned along the rusted catwalks, flares ready. Evelyn stood in the courtyard, kerosene lamp at her feet, humming an old coal miner hymn. I watched from the gantry, pulse a war drum. Minutes dragged. Then, footsteps, 2 sets, one heavy, one light. Logan's voice drifted through fog. Evelyn, is that you? She stiffened but kept humming. A second voice, her late husband Marvin, joined Logan's, pleading, shapes blurred in the mist. I struck a flare, signaling. Deputies slammed iron gates, sealing exits. The creature stepped into lamp glow, wearing Marvin's sagging overalls, Logan's badge pinned crookedly. Its mouth opened wider than jaw hinges permitted, tongues layering over tongues. Evelyn whispered, "I'm sorry, Marvin," and kicked the lamp, shattering glass. Kerosene splashed the creature's legs. I hurled mine from the catwalk. Others followed. Flame whooshed, painting night infernal. The skinwalker shrieked, form flickering. Logan's face melting into Dad's, into mine, into a hairless, eyeless skull. It thrashed, claws raking iron walls, trying to climb. Deputies fired salt. Sparks flew, screams doubled. I thought we'd won, until the creature burst upward with impossible strength, clearing the chute, landing atop the gantry. Fire clung to it like wings of molten pitch. It looked at me, hatred raw. A burning hand seized my collar, hauling me over the rail. Below yawned the furnace pit. 12 feet down. We toppled together. Heat swallowed air. Pain seared flesh. But iron does not burn. The floor plate seared the monster's skin. It recoiled, giving me space to crawl. I seized a fallen I-beam shard, its edge glowing. With every ounce of grief and rage, I drove the iron through its torso. A sound like glaciers cracking split the night. The skinwalker convulsed, form cycling, Logan, Dad, Mom, Sheriff, Child, Beast, until settling on a shape I did not recognize, tall, gaunt, covered in gray fur, eyes lidless and white. It whispered in a language older than stone, then crumbled into ash and bone. Silence followed, broken only by the hiss of cooling metal. Deputies hauled me up, my arms blistered, lungs smoked. Evelyn wept, hugging me. The creature was gone, or so we prayed. But as dawn bled over the river, a deputy radio crackled. "Sheriff Logan here," said a voice lined with static. "Need pickup near Brimstone Ridge. Trucks busted." We stared at the radio, dread returning. The skinwalker's mimicry lived on the airwaves now, maybe in our heads. Maybe it never needed a body, only our belief. I gripped the charred iron shard. The fight was far from over. Chapter 5. Echoes on the airwaves. The radio refused to die. Deputy Carl smashed the handset against the cruiser dash until plastic shards rattled at his feet, but the speaker still crackled Logan's voice over a low-frequency hum. "Need pickup. Bring salt and iron. I'm hurt bad." Each repetition stretched vowels thinner, like tape worn by too many playbacks. Carl hurled the pieces onto Main Street. The voice droned on, now from a storefront police scanner, then from the volunteer firehouse PA. Somewhere south, a tornado siren wailed 3 notes of the lullaby Mom used to sing. The skinwalker had colonized the town's nervous system. We regrouped in the courthouse basement, brick walls thick enough to dampen signals. 12 townsfolk remained unhurt, maybe sane. Evelyn brewed chicory, its bitter steam failing to cut cordite stench from our clothes. "We can't outrun broadcast," Pastor Wynne said. He looked 80, not 60. Grief etching new years overnight. It'll ride towers across counties. But it's tied to the mountain, I argued. The voices weaken the farther they transmit. It needs proximity. Carl unfolded a topo map, knife tip tracing a ridgeline arc. Brimstone mines connect to old TVA relay tunnels, abandoned microwave repeater built in the 60s. If it nests near those dishes, it can piggyback every antenna in Appalachia. And every grief-stricken ear would answer. The plan formed like frost. Infiltrate the relay chamber, sever coax lines with iron blades, flood the tunnels with consecrated salt water, then ignite diesel to glass fuse the rock. A priest, 2 deputies, a coal engineer, and me, the unwilling protagonist, would shoulder the task. We loaded supplies into an ATV convoy, jugs of creek water blessed by wind, 50-pound sacks of stock salt, iron rebar filed to spear points, and twin chainsaws. Rain paused, but mist clung low, muting colors. The world looked Xeroxed, one copy too faded. Halfway up Brimstone's service road, my walkie hissed alive. Dad's voice again, softer now, pleading. "Son, come quick, trapped in the dark." Static swallowed syllables. I clicked it off. The relay entrance hid behind a landslide of shale and birch, concrete doorframe throat-deep in debris. We used chainsaws to clear trunks, wedges to pry the hatch, revealing a stairwell slanting into black. Evelyn handed each of us an earpiece tuned to a silent channel. "If you hear anyone you love on comms, rip the bud out." She kissed my cheek, motherly but final. We descended. The passage reeked of wet copper and ozone. Fluorescent tubes flickered sporadically, fed by some residual current. Our headlamps found graffiti, names scrawled in soot, dates trailing back to 67. Farther in, the walls bore scratches, words etched by claws. Believe, hunger, echo. A low pulse vibrated the air, subaudible but chest-rattling, like standing beside a massive speaker with the bass all the way up. The relay's heart still beat. At level 3, we entered the main chamber, a cathedral of rusted antennas and rack cabinets, cables drooping like jungle vines. In the center stood a monolith of stone, no, flesh disguised as stone. The skinwalker had merged with the equipment, sinew woven through transformers, hooves fused into rebar. Faces bubbled across its surface, Logan's, Dad's, Ethan's, lips moving in silent broadcast. Pastor Wynne choked on his psalm. The creature's eyes opened, hundreds, each a polished mirror. They reflected us as pallid corpses, throats slit. Carl hurled an iron spear. The monolith shuddered. Sparks flew. Voices erupted from every speaker, overlapping grief with laughter. The stone flesh cracked, birthing limbs, wolf forearms, human hands, stag antlers spiking ceiling tiles. "Pour the salt," I shouted. Engineer Hayes wrenched open the water drums, brine sloshing across grated floor. Wynne recited an exorcism, voice steadier than his hands. The creature writhed, cables snapping free, raining sparks. It tore Logan's face off its skin and flung it like wet parchment. It landed against my boot with a slap. I swung rebar, severing a thick coax artery. Black ichor sprayed, sizzling where it met salt. The bass hum faltered. The skinwalker shrank, pulling mass from circuitry, trying to retreat. Carl revved a chainsaw, teeth howling. He carved through another trunk of flesh cable. The creature screamed, the sound slicing nerves, a wrong chord you feel in bone. Suddenly, Wynne's earpiece crackled. His late wife's voice sang their wedding hymn. He froze, tears brimming. The hymn deepened, became a command. "John, come home." He stepped toward the monster. I tackled him, ripping the bud free. "It's not her." But the distraction cost us. Tendrils snared Hayes, yanking him into the stone mass. His scream receded, replaced by a new face swelling into the surface, eyes wide, mouth agape. "Diesel!" Carl shouted. He hurled jerry cans, fuel splashing oily rainbows. I struck a flare, heart hammering. In that instant, the creature focused entirely on me, all faces aligned, mouths forming my name, not begging but cursing. The monolith lurched, toppling as I rolled aside. It struck the floor, cracking open. Within its core, I glimpsed a smaller figure. A child-sized skeleton wrapped in desiccated hide, wearing Dad's pocket watch around its neck. The watch still ticked, hands spinning reverse. Recognition. This thing had a seed, a heart. I jammed the flare into the cavity. Flame raced across Diesel, blooming blue-white. Carl grabbed Wynne. We sprinted up the stairs as heat chased. The explosion lifted us, threw us against walls. Concrete buckled and the mountain roared. We emerged into pre-dawn light just as the relay bunker collapsed inward, earth swallowing hate. Dust plumed skyward, glowing rose under first sun. No radio voices followed, but victory tasted ash. Haze gone, half the town scarred. I wondered if the seed truly burned, or if embers burrowed deeper, waiting for fresh grief to kindle. At the trailhead, Evelyn met us, eyes questioning. I shook my head for Hayes. She said nothing, just took my hand. Across the valley, morning bells rang from Zion. For the first time in days, they sounded off-key, 2 notes flat, or maybe it was my ears still ringing. Either way, silence felt suspect now. Every echo held shape and intent. I kept the charred pocket watch, found near where the bunker collapsed. Its hands had finally stopped at 3:33. I didn't wind it. Chapter 6. The stillness between heartbeats. For 12 hours after the bunker imploded, nothing happened. No voices in the static, no hoofprints in the mud, no midnight knocks. The silence clung to Morgan's gap like plastic over a corpse, airtight, preserving dread beneath a calm surface. Folks called it victory. I felt it breathing. I spent that afternoon on Dad's porch, bandages itching where claws had grazed my ribs. The charred pocket watch lay on the railing, hands stuck at 3:33. Every so often I'd glance at it, half expecting the brass lid to snap open. It didn't. Nothing moved except shadows of clouds lumbering across the ridge. By twilight, the mountain itself felt vacant. Cicadas sang, but their rhythm stuttered, as if the conductor had left the stage. Pastor Wynne called it a Sabbath rest. Deputy Carl took the lull to ferry wounded to the county clinic. Evelyn forced stew on whoever remained. That night, I dreamt the mine tunnels again, but this time I walked them as spectator. No weapon, no body. In the dream, the skinwalker crouched over the skeleton child, cradling it like a doll. It whispered a single word into the child's cracked skull. Again. When I woke, the watch ticked, not backward, forward, normal tempo, seconds slipping away. The hands now read 12:04. I bolted to Main Street, watch clutched in shaking fist. Wynne and Evelyn met me at the church steps. I showed them. Midnight 4, Wynne muttered, witching hour inverted. A bell tolled once from the empty belfry, though the rope had snapped days earlier during the Skinwalker siege. The iron clapper swung unaided, ringing exactly at 12:05 on the watch. Townsfolk spilled from doorways, eyes wide. The bell tolled again, 12:06, each strike aligned with the watch's minute hand advance. A countdown. Carl wheeled his SUV into the square. "Phones just died," he shouted. "Generators too. It's sucking juice." Lightning spidered the overcast, but no thunder followed. A pressure, like barometric freefall before a tornado, pressed eardrums inward. Children cried. Dogs crouched. When the watch hit 12:10, the bell silenced. Streetlights blinked out. Moon erased itself behind roiling cloud. In that ink, a new sound rose. Not voices this time, but heartbeat. Slow, colossal, echoing through bedrock. Boom. Pause. Boom. The mountain's metronome. Wynne whispered a verse, Psalm 46, but words faltered. Evelyn grabbed my arm. "Clock's a tether," she said. "Destroy it." I hurled the watch onto asphalt and smashed it with my boot. The glass shattered, gears skittering. The heartbeat paused, then accelerated, thudding faster, angrier. From every direction, forest line to rooftops, shapes emerged, thin silhouettes wearing burlap masks. Their eyes glowed coal red. They moved like marionettes yanked by one puppeteer, converging on the square. "Miners," Evelyn breathed, "the ones lost to cave-ins." No, it was worse. As the figures stepped into lampglow, each wore the face of someone we'd lost this week. Hayes, Sheriff Logan, my parents. But the features were stitched onto wrong bodies. Hayes's wide grin on a child's skull, Mom's gentle eyes above a bare, thick neck. Patchwork souls. The skinwalker had outsourced its grief, animating corpses and memories in one sewn-together legion. Carl fired a warning shot. The silhouettes didn't flinch. They only echoed the bullet's crack, mouths mimicking muzzle flash. Boom. Pause. Boom. Inside the church, Wynne shouted. Parishioners surged through double doors, slamming oak beams in place. Glass trembled as the stitched ones pressed against stained panes, faces smeared like melted wax. I scanned pews, maybe 20 survivors now. The concrete basement could hold if we barricaded, but supplies were thin, and the skinwalker thrived on siege. Evelyn tugged my sleeve, pointing to the altar rail where the broken watch lay, whole again, ticking at 12:11. I'd left it outside. Wynne crossed himself. "It resets because you carry the memory, not the metal." Realization hit. The watch recorded grief cycles. Destroying it meant nothing while guilt spun its gears. We needed to release the grief, convert it, own it, before the skinwalker could weaponize it. "Funeral," I said. "We never buried the dead. Logan, Hayes, Dad, Mom. We need rites." Carl scoffed. "You want a service now?" "Yes." Closure denies the skinwalker raw sorrow. Wynne's eyes lit with purpose. "We'll hold vigil. Candle, prayer, send the spirits beyond its reach." The makeshift ritual began. Evelyn lit altar candles. Wynne recited liturgy, voice echoing against vaulted cedar. I spoke my father's eulogy, his stubborn love, his flawed kindness. Words cracked but flowed. Others followed. Names, stories, laughter through tears. Outside, pounding ceased. The stitched figures wavered like smoke, forms destabilizing. The watch ticks slowed. Then the main doors exploded inward, not from hooves or claws, but from silence so dense it became force. Candles snuffed. Darkness split by red eyes descending the aisle. The skinwalker itself, no disguise. Grey fur, triple-jointed limbs, antler crown dripping tallow. It howled, a sound that sucked sound away. Windows imploded, pews cracked. People fell to the floor, clutching ears. I staggered, vision tunnel narrow. The creature stepped onto the altar, kicking the chalice aside. It reached for the watch, its anchor. I dove, ramming an iron candle holder into its calf. The iron hissed, flesh bubbled. It backhanded me into the baptismal marble fracturing. Wynne hurled holy water, droplets steamed on fur. Evelyn rang the handbell funeral toll. Each peal staggered the beast. I crawled, ribs screaming, grabbed the watch. 12:14 now, 3 minutes till. What? Full haunting. I snapped the chain free, shoved the watch into the split marble font and whispered, not a prayer, but truth. "Dad, I forgive you for leaving. Mom, I'm okay. Hayes, I'm sorry." Warmth flooded the water, luminous. The watch sank, glow expanding outward like dawn under liquid. The skinwalker shrieked, lunging, but its claws passed through a barrier of light around the font. Faces peeled from its hide, fluttering away like moths, dissolving mid-air. Antlers cracked, sloughing bark like skin. Underneath was the child skeleton, no bigger than 7, eyes empty. It stepped back, unsteady, severed from stolen souls. Evelyn whispered, "It's just a lost child." I reached out. The skeleton looked at my open palm, then at the glowing water. Slowly, it removed the watch from its own neck and released it into the font. The second the brass touched light, the skeleton collapsed into ash. A gale swept through the church, pulling ash, sorrow, stitched bodies, and after voices out the shattered windows, up into the pre-storm sky. The mountain exhaled. Silence settled, but this time it felt lighter. I knelt, shaking. Wynne rested a hand on my shoulder. "You gave it rest." Carl surveyed the damage. "Town's half gone, but we're breathing." Evelyn added, "Breathing is a start." Outside, dawn edged the horizon. The watch lay in the font. Hand stopped at 12:15, quarter past grief. I left it there. Chapter 7, Where the Earth Remembers Names. The church doors never closed right again after the gale. Boards hung crooked, stained glass shards crunching under boots as we salvaged what hymnals remained dry. Dawn ambled across Morgan's Gap, puddling pink on ruin. Collapsed porches, power lines garroted by fallen pines. The courthouse dome split like an egg. But no red eyes prowled, no stitched corpses stirred. The skinwalker, child, beast, legion, was ash upon the wind. Yet the mountain breathed a new note, emptiness, yes, but also hunger denied. And hunger denied often mutates into vengeance. Deputy Carl organized a relief convoy to the county seat, where generators still hummed. Wynne, exhausted, insisted on staying to tend the shaken flock. Evelyn joined triage at the clinic, wrapping burns, consoling orphans born of the night. I should have felt relief, maybe purpose. Instead, an itch gnawed beneath my ribs. The place claws had once grazed, unfinished business. The watch lay inert in the cracked font. But sometimes, while sweeping soot from the nave, I swore I heard it tick. One heartbeat, then silence. I leaned in. Nothing. The itch persisted. By sunset, I found myself on the ridge trail, shotgun slung, compass dangling. No plan, only a pull toward Brimstone Sinkhole, where Dad's truck skeleton rusted. Closure required evidence. A corpse for a coffin, proof to bury. I reached the pit edge at Gloam. The landslide debris glimmered with mica under starfire. A strange calm settled, like entering a cathedral of stone. The cavern mouth yawned wider since the blast, revealing a spiral ramp of broken timbers descending into dark marrow. I tied nylon to a stump, rappelled 20 feet before boots hit scree. Headlamp flickered to life, beam slicing dust motes. The air smelled not of carrion now, but of cold clay, clean, old. The shaft sloped into a natural chamber I'd never mapped, its walls etched with petroglyphs, antlered figures, spiral suns, human silhouettes with split faces, red ochre pigment still vivid. Between two figures, a symbol repeated, a broken watch. I traced finger over stone. Grit tingled skin. The itch under ribs intensified, a magnet pulling iron filings of dread. Ahead, a column of stalagmites formed an archway. Beyond it, heartbeat returned, soft, fetal. I killed the lamp. Darkness glowed faint blue, sourced from bioluminescent fungus carpeting the floor like a midnight field. In that light, I saw Dad standing beneath a stone altar. Not a stitched revenant, my real father, face weathered, eyes warm. He wore the flannel I'd packed away days ago. He smiled. "There you are, sport." Logic screamed, "Impossible." Yet grief whispered shape into hope. I stepped forward. His form flickered, revealing the skeleton child overlaying his silhouette, then flicked back to Dad. He reached out. "Come home." I raised the shotgun, salt round chambered. Hands shook. Dad lowered his eyes, pleading, "Don't leave me down here again." Memories crashed. Me at 8, forgetting to pick up coal buckets. Dad's disappointment. At 13, him teaching me to shoot rattles off fence posts. At 22, my silence after Mom's funeral. All the unspoken weight forged into this moment. Tears blurred lamplight. "I didn't leave you," I whispered. "You left me." The figure's face sagged, melting into the child skeleton. It stepped back against the altar, which I now saw wasn't stone but conglomerate of watches, gears, bones, and antlers fused. In its center ticked the brass pocket watch, hands spinning languidly. Each tick carved new glyphs onto the walls, as if time itself was chiseling prophecy. I understood. The skinwalker never died. It redistributed, returning to the seed altar that birthed it. The ritual in the church freed souls, but fed the core grief deposit, and now it needed a new caretaker, me. The skeleton extended the watch. "Trade," it rasped, voice like wind through reeds. Behind it, silhouettes coalesced. Logan, Hayes, Mom, others, but faceless, waiting. If I took the watch, the cycle reset, forestalling another calamity at cost of my humanity. If I refused, the altar might break open, birthing a fresh legion. I thought of Morgan's Gap, what remained worth saving, and weighed my soul. I slung the shotgun, stepped forward. The skeleton's eye cavities brightened. I placed one hand on the watch and curled the other around the flare in my pocket. "Trade accepted," I said, pulling the watch free. The moment it left the altar, the skeleton sagged, exhaling dust. Glyphs on walls stopped carving. I struck the flare, jammed it into the altar core. Fire ignited dry lichen, racing along bone and brass. The chamber roared. Figures wailed, disintegrating as heat rose. I ran, watch burning my palm, scampering up rope just as a blast of soot belched from the tunnel. The sinkhole spit cinders into starlight. I rolled onto moss, coughing. The watch in my hand no longer burned, cold, hands fused at 12:16. 1 minute past grief, perhaps. Back in town, Wynne listened, solemn. He held the watch, nodded. "A covenant sealed in fire. It won't tick again unless the mountain finds a new caretaker," I asked. "What if grief breeds another?" He looked toward the ridge, shadowed against dawn lavender. "Then we heal before it hatches." Healing, a foreign word. But as sunlight spilled over ruined rooftops, villagers began rebuilding, hammer ringing, children's laughter tentative but real. Evelyn ladled stew again. Carl wired a generator. Wynne rehung the belfry rope. I placed the watch inside the church font, now repaired with mortar and iron filings. We poured fresh water over it, sealing it beneath a thin layer of resin, neither buried nor forgotten, but contained. The itch beneath my ribs faded, replaced by ache of healing flesh. Shallow breaths no longer tasted of pine smoke and fear, only morning cool. Outside, the cicadas struck a new rhythm, steady, unbroken. The mountains finally fell silent enough to listen. Chapter 8. Leave a Light for the Living. The first true summer storm rolled across Morgan's Gap 3 days after the altar fell. A black wall of cloud rumbling like drums in an endless funeral march. Rain came sideways, drenching the half-rebuilt porches, hammering the patched bell tower, turning dirt streets to veins of red clay. It felt cleansing, but we had learned that water could carry more than silt. It could carry echoes. I watched from Dad's porch, the shotgun dismantled at my feet, oil rag black with soot and old grief. With each lightning flash, the mountains framed themselves in electric X-rays, bones of ridges, ribs of timber, the heart of a wilderness that would never fully forgive or forget. No ticking watch, no whispers, just thunder. And still, I listened for footsteps that matched my cadence. Deputy Carl radioed from the clinic at dusk. Power stable, no unnatural radio chatter. Pastor Wynne reported the church candles burning steady, flames unflickered by phantom gusts. Evelyn served stew from a cauldron the size of a baptismal, laughter floating from the vestibule windows. Life, stubborn as knotweed, was rising, yet nightfall in these hills has a habit of taking back its due. As the last peach smear bled from the sky, the wind shifted, bringing a scent I knew too well, ammonia over wet cedar. I traced it to the ridge trail, where storm runoff carved new gullies through the loam. At the trailhead sat the brass pocket watch, perfectly dry, hands at 12:17. Someone had pried the resin seal from the font. Fear is a tired muscle. Eventually it refuses to spasm. I pocketed the watch, shoulders heavy with resignation, and followed fresh footprints, bare, child small, up the trail. They glowed faintly, bioluminescent spores blooming in each impression, marking a path like foxfire lanterns. Half a mile in, the forest opened onto the old logging clearing where Dad once taught me to split oak. There, beneath the storm-shredded tarp of a derelict skidder, knelt the skeleton child, reconstituted in patches of sinew and moss. It cradled a lump of wet clay, shaping it into a rough figurine, antlers, broken face, a totem, a seed. The child looked up, sockets empty yet pleading. It held out the clay effigy. "Make home," it whispered, voice not hungry now but hollow. It thrust the figure into my hands, then pointed toward the gap below, where lanterns flickered in every window. "Home," it repeated. Understanding dawned like lightning. The mountain births skinwalkers not from malice, but from exile. Spirits unmourned, names unremembered, grief untended, they coalesce until flesh is the only language left. The child was asking for remembrance, not dominion. I knelt in mud, heart hammering. "Tell me your name," I said, though I doubted it remembered. It tilted its skull, confused, jaw clicking dry. The mountains had stolen its tongue long before I was born, so I gave it one. I pressed the clay figure to my chest and whispered, "Morgan, for the town that will never forget you." The child's bones glowed pale blue. Rain hissed on the clay but didn't dissolve it. I placed the figurine on a flat stone, balanced the watch inside its hollow chest, and piled river pebbles around it, an Appalachian cairn, marker of the lost. Then I lit the flare, not as weapon but beacon, searing symbol into the night. The skeleton reached toward the flame, fingers basking. Its bones began to dissolve into glowing spores, lifting on the heat like fireflies. They drifted between trees, settling on leaves, soaking into bark. The forest drank the story. The last to lift was the skull. It nodded once, gratitude maybe, before crumbling into starlight. When the flare died, silence held. No ammonia, no heartbeat, only rain and the distant, hopeful clang of wind's bell, welcoming storm-soaked volunteers to midnight prayer. I gathered stones, building the cairn higher. With each layer I spoke a name: Logan Mathers, Samuel Hayes, Gloria Ueda, Samuel Ueda, every miner swallowed by tunnels, every child lost to the holler. Names are anchors. Spoken aloud, they keep grief human-shaped. I returned at dawn, clothes plastered, to find Carl pacing the porch. "Font seals intact," he said, eyes bloodshot. "Watch is still inside." "It's a token now," I answered, slipping him the clay-filled palm. "Best keep it where light reaches." We buried the figurine at the church garden beneath fresh-planted dogwood. Wind blessed the soil. Evelyn sang a lullaby that once echoed wrong but now felt whole. As we finished, cicadas lifted a chorus, steady, rhythmic, a soundtrack to normalcy. If you ever hear your name drifting from a dark tree line, do not answer. Light a candle and speak the names of those you love instead. If you find a watch whose hands don't listen to time, bury it in memory, not earth. And if you survive a night that tries to wear your skin, tell someone, tell everyone. Stories are stitches. They keep the seams of the world from unraveling. Morgan's Gap begins its rebuild tomorrow, but we'll leave one porch lamp burning every night, forever. A lighthouse for wandering grief, a warning to whatever prowls these ridges wearing stolen voices. So keep your own lamps burning, friend. And if this tale kept you company in the dark, share it, subscribe, leave a light for the living. Because the mountains never forget a secret, and neither should we.